want to say thank you for everybody who came out, but most importantly, I want to say thank you to Talia, Chloe, and her team for bringing all this together, for making the time to process everything. There's so much time for this. I want to begin my speech with a quote from Martin Luther King that says that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So, I want to begin now. My name is Dawit Yohannes Kifla-Mariam, and I'm from Eritrea and Burundi. I moved to New York when I was 6 back in 2003, and I've lived here from ever since. I have had the opportunity to travel back to my home country to visit my family as I was growing up, which helped shape the perspective I have of the world today. Coming from where I'm coming from, the opportunity to live in the United States means a chance towards hopefully a better life, not only for myself, but as well for my family. But growing up in the States, I never saw myself personally as an African American or a Negro, or I never felt a way to subscribe to being black. Although these were the labels that were given to people who looked like me, I saw myself as an African, as a Burundian, as an Eritrean. But when I first moved here as a young boy, I didn't always feel so comfortable in my own skin. I went to private schools that were predominantly white, Jewish, European, while all the other races and ethnicities were minorities. Those environments made me feel at a young age like having a lighter skin was cooler, more acceptable, and that I would be better off that way. At the time, I didn't have the courage and the consciousness to express those sentiments, but it had an impact on my confidence and my psychological development as a young man. Later on in my teenage years, as I began to branch out of my circle, my environments, my comfort zone, I made more friends who are of the African diaspora and who identified as African American. Soon enough, I began feeling very comfortable in my skin and in my identity. As this consciousness grew, I ventured out into different parts of the United States. I began seeing and witnessing the discrimination and racism in different ways, whether it was at the sports match, a local shopping center, or at a district park. Soon enough, I began to feel more of the underlying racial tensions that exist inside this country today, which leads me to my main topic of discussion for this afternoon: education and community. I repeat, education and community. In order for us to combat systemic racism and structural oppression here in the United States, I'm going to repeat, in order for us to combat systemic racism and structural oppression here in the United States, we need to reevaluate the importance of education and community in our lives. There is a certain level of mental reprogramming that needs to be done individually and collectively in order for us to say that we live in unity and in peace. When I speak of education, most of us tend to forget that the United States was founded and created through the genocide of the indigenous people. Prior to the Dutch settling here in New York, the Lenape tribe was responsible for governing this territory. Our schools and our education systems tend to sweep under the rug the oppression and the injustice that Africans in America stolen and taken from Africa to perform free labor throughout history. As well, we choose to swipe under the rug the oppression that women have faced in the workforce and at home by white men. For white Americans, it is important for you all to remind yourselves and your children about this non-pleasant history so that in no shape or form does it get repeated today. Whether that be in the classroom as a small racist joke about a dark-skinned student, or within the form of police brutality towards other African-American males displayed by Derek Chauvin, the police officer who killed George Floyd. I personally feel like the main reason Derek acted the way he did towards George was because of the education he got in his community. Whether it was the belief that whites are superior to blacks or that aggression is the best way to resolve conflict and difficult situations. Only through non-biased education, emotional education, physical, spiritual education can we begin to learn how to honor ourselves and the human beings we live amongst. To the African diaspora, African Americans, black folks, all my brothers and sisters who are categorized in America as these labels, I say to you, it's important that we live up to the responsibility that we bear to rise up from this oppression and begin to become leaders and positive role models for our fellow brothers and sisters, to show them that black is beautiful, and that the sky is the limit. That black is beautiful and that the sky is the limit. Now, this leads me to my next point in regards to the importance of community. There is a Nigerian proverb that says it takes a whole village or a community to raise a child. It takes a whole village or a community to raise a child. This quote speaks to the fact that the youth of today spend a majority of their time outside of their house, being influenced by what they see in their neighborhoods, what's on social media, which means that all of us living in a community are responsible for the growth and the development of our community members. We can't afford to turn a blind eye towards somebody just because they're not part of our immediate family, our friend, or our cultural group. If something bad happens to somebody, a young boy, a girl, an adult on Roosevelt Island, it's our responsibility to give them help, to offer guidance, and to set the right example. The more that we can become role models for each other, the better off we will all be. Now, lastly, despite the challenges, despite the racial oppression challenges that we face as a nation and as a human family, I personally have a lot of hope. This generation of youths, millennials, Generation Z, Generation Gen Alpha, born in 2013, are by far the most diverse generation found in history. This diversity and this exposure to different cultures allows for the next generation of human beings to judge each other not based on the color of their skin, but on the content of their character. The next generation is better equipped and prepared to see the similarities in each other rather than the differences, and embrace diversity. Now, as long as we don't swipe the injustices of the past under the rug because we cannot bear the pain and the responsibility to address it, I think that there's going to be hope for the future, not to repeat the same mistakes made throughout history. My condolences go out to George Floyd's family and all of the families throughout the United States and all of the families throughout the world who have lost their loved ones to systemic racism, structural oppression, and lawless police behavior. Right now, I want to say, in honor of telling them everybody who has put this together, I want everybody to join in a chant with me, very easy. Why-yay! Why-yay! Why-yay-yo-yo! Why-yay-yo-yo! Why-yay! Why-yay-yo-yo! Why-yay-yo-yo! Why-yay! Why-yay-yo-yo! Why-yay-yo-yo! Why-yay! Thank you.
Hello! I love this! I love to see everybody out here!
How you doing?
I love to see the support! I love to see people standing